Hi everyone, I'm Harley D, and today we're going to be making bass like this. And bass like this. And bass like this. Okay, so let's get straight into it then. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a quick play then. Okay, so we're gonna have a look over this bass first, and what that is being obviously made from is a sub and a mid bass. So I'm just going to go over the sub. Let's just loop this part here. First off, I'm going to show you the notes. So it's all made with the note of D, except this second note has a pitch bend. So it's going to be pitch bending up from E to back down to D. So this point here is going to be 2 semitones up. And you can see that with the top number down here on Serum. And then when it gets back to that middle line, it's going to be back to its root note. So it's going to go from E to D on this second note here. And that's going to help really tame that, shape that screechy sound. Instead of making it sound static, it's going to give it some extra sort of character. Otherwise, it wouldn't sound as good. So yeah, it's quite important having this pitch bend here on the MIDI, which I will show you going forward on the Screech bass. But yeah, let's have a look at how this sub bass is made. So in Serum, it's just a sine wave. I've got this LFO, it's not doing anything. The master's set to 0 dB. There's no effects on. I've turned the random phase off and dropped the octave down by 2 just to get it back into the sub region. So yeah, that's just going to be a sine wave. That's really all it is in Serum. But yeah, the rest of it's going to be coming from the post-processing. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to play it to you now. So that's basically just a sine wave. And yeah, what I'm doing is using Melder Wave Shaper to create these extra harmonics. So if you right-click the point in the middle, you can choose this sine wave option, which I'm using on this bass, on this sub. And I've turned it up by 4 dB nearly, 50% wet dry. And I've put the cubic mode on and automatic gain control, asymmetric and DC blocker on. And this is giving me these extra harmonics in the sub. Which is really helping helping it blend with this mid bass that is quite high up in the frequency range. If you just had a sub there without these extra harmonics, it's going to sound really separated. So this gives some like glue and cohesion to these two elements to create a fixed sound. And then next up on the channel, I've got a shaper box. So this is just going to be side chaining to the kick to the sub. And I've got one for the snare just to help the snare pop through, but the mix is only at 40%. So that's just going to cut out when the snare hits, essentially. Just by a little bit to let the transient pop through. And then finally, I've got this EQ here, and I'm just cutting at 300 hertz, a 48 dB octave slope there. And I'm making these decisions a lot later on in the track. Obviously, with this master bus on, pushing the track up, I come back to the sub just to bring it down by like 1.5 dB, bring this frequency down here around about 130 hertz and push up at 240 hertz to create a bit more warmth and less distortion in the track. So yeah, these are like mixed decisions that are made a bit further on. So yeah, that's how the sub's made. It goes into a bass bus that's got another EQ to push it up. It pushes it up quite strange. But like I said, this is going to be a mixed decision. And what I do is I route some like ring modulated noise into this bass bus. Hence why I've got this weird EQ at the top end. But yeah, we're not going to go into that sort of sound design at the moment. We're going to have a look at this screechy bass now. So in terms of the MIDI, let's have a little listen. So as you can see, I'm using that pitch bend to create the character of the sound. If it was just like, let's bring the pitch bend down, and then we'll have a look how it's all made. It just sounds really static, and it doesn't have that sort of extra character dimension to the sound. So let's put the pitch bends back on. As you can see, I've got this note back up at E here. So it's going to have even higher pitch bend on the first note, just to create these little variations to make the sound not so static. But yeah, what I'm going to do is turn off all the processing. So basically, I've got the mid bus, and the lane, the channel itself. So I'm just going to turn it all off, and I'm going to show you the patch now. Okay, so let's have a look how it's made in Serum then. So yeah, I've got a sub going direct out. The level's set to 51%, and I'm using oscillator B, the analog BD sine, which you can find there. Pitched up 2 octaves and 3 semitones up. I've got the unison on 3 and the D tune at 0.07. The wavetable position's at 146. And the level starts right at the bottom, and I'm creating this shape here to shape the attack of it coming in and how it ends, because that's just going to play over that sort of audio block there. The rate set a bar, it's on trigger mode, and it's going to be going from, so LFO 4 going to the volume of B by 52%. And if you have a look at the filter, I've got the filter, so oscillator B running through the filter on the bandpass 24. The cutoff set at 223, and I'm using LFO 1 to move that cutoff a little bit, just a little bit. And you see this shape here, so it's going to open up a little bit like that over a bar. You can set the motor trigger here as well. I've left it off, so leave it on off if you want. And I've also put LFO 1 onto the mix. And it's, if I just show you the amounts, by the mix is like by -2. So it's a really small amount just to give it, just to open it up a little bit. And the same with the LFO 1 to the filter cutoff, it's like 7. They don't make a massive difference, but yeah, this is just what I ended up doing. And yeah, in terms of how that sounds, let's turn this off here, the effects. So you can hear it's just a sub with that tone now, that's all it is really. And I'm going to use the sine shaper to make the tone a bit more aggressive. And as you can see, I've got it set to pre here and cutting it off at 1130 hertz. And the 0.1 there on the resonant part. Is that the, yeah, I think that is the Q basically, yeah. The drive's at 33, the mixer's at 100. And then I've got this compressor in multi-band mode with the threshold at 11.4, the ratio at 2:1. The attack's at 95 and the release is at 90, the gain's at 8.2. And that's just bringing the tone up again. Now we've got the sub and the tone. Let's have a look at the post-processing, because that's how this patch is made. I'll just give the patch away for people on Patreon, but it's really basic patch. It's all going to be how you utilize this sort of tone and sub with the post-processing, which we're going to have a look at now. So yeah, let's have a look at the post-processing. The first thing is to get some noise in there, and I'm using Shaperbox for this. And I've split the bands up, so it's just following the tone. So it's not following the sub. So what this does is it will add noise to the signal that it follows. So I'm going to do it here and turn the amount up by 80%. This is going to add the noise in. So you need to choose the noise module, by the way. You can see I've got it white noise. I haven't set it to mono. I'm cutting it off at 120 hertz and 20K, 21.1K. And yeah, what I do is bring the release down to like 31.8. The hold down to 0 and the attack down to 0.10. And this makes it really like shape well with the envelope of the mids, the tone essentially. Because bear in mind, we don't want it to follow the sub region because we've put a sub in this patch. So it's just going to follow the tonal parts basically, the tonal frequencies. So yeah, I've left the threshold down. The amount's at 8%. And that's pretty much everything here, as you can see, if you've got Shaperbox. I think I'm using Shaperbox 2 here. For some reason. I've got the update now, but it's the same thing. And next up, we've got Decapitator. So if we have a listen to this. Okay, so next up, we've got Decapitator. Let me just give that a quick play. And as you can hear, that's what's really distorting this noise, tone, and sub together to create that sort of gelled sound. So yeah, what I'll do is just run you through these parameters. I've got it driven by 6. The low cut's on the 3rd dot up. Just so not so much sub is going to be getting distorted with all of those elements. And the key to this is to bring the tone down, otherwise it will sound really tinny. So if I was to bring the tone to where it is, it's too much. So I'm bringing it down to like 1, 2, 3, 4 points down towards the dark. And I'm leaving the auto gain on as well. The dry wet, that's all the way up to wet. So that's what's really creating the basis of this sound. Next up, I've got Shaper Box. You won't need to do this. This is just me turning it down at certain points. So you can ignore that one. Yeah, this is the EQ that I'm opting to use. As you can see, we've still got the sub in it, but I'm just dipping these frequencies and pushing these ones up just to get a nicer balance. So essentially, it's just boosting up this region here around about 5K by 6 dB. And I'm just choosing points where I don't want it to be as loud. And I'm just dropping down the 800 hertz region by like 3 dB to start off with. That's just like sort of like what I thought sounded nice. Okay, so next up we've got Valhalla Room. This is just to add a bit of reverb to the sound. I'll just give that a play. And yeah, the key to this is to have a short decay. So I've got it set at 0.33 seconds there, and the pre-delay is at 22 milliseconds, and the dry wet, the mix is at 27%. They're just standard how they come, so it's high cutting at 8K as well, just to add not add as many high frequencies through on that reverb. And yeah, that's just added a nice sort of space to this sound, and not making it sound so dry, which it was. And I'm actually using a splitter before this, so it doesn't reverb the sub. So I'm splitting it at like 240 hertz a signal, and the reverb's only going to go on the frequencies above 240 hertz. And that's only because there was sub before it, and Valhalla Room doesn't have the option to do that in this version. Next up, I'm going to clip it off and push it by 1.7 dB just to get it a bit more clip signal. Just to clip some peaks and turn the level up, essentially. And then I'm going to be using an EQ to cut the sub out. And then finally, I've got Shaper Box just to cut it, basically just to sidechain it when the kick hits again. So yeah, these are, important things, but they're more mix issues. Okay, and yeah, next up it goes into the mid bass bus. So I'm just going to show you this EQ here. It might look a bit mad, but essentially what I'm trying to do is push the tone up by like 9 dB, and then around about the 5K region, 3K region, about 6 dB. But I just didn't want to push up this frequency here, so I'm going to play that for you. So I'm just trying to give it a little space there and not so much push on these upper frequencies. So yeah, that's the point of this EQ, but it's just to basically bring the level up in the mix. Once you get this far, you might want to push it up in the mix, essentially, and I've just did it with EQ. And then I've got a sidechain on this mid-bass bus, which is for the snare again, just to let the snare transient through. And then I've got Denise Noise following this sound again. And I've got the high pass set at 850 hertz, the low pass frequency is set at 16K. The stereo is full, so this is going to add a bit more stereo noise just underneath it. It's really subtle though, because I've got the mix at 50% and the full's at 4. So it's really subtle to hear. Just adds a little bit more. If I bring it up a bit more, you can hear it a lot there. I just wanted a little bit more noise underneath it. And then I've got another EQ, which is once again, it's another mix EQ. It's just pushing it back up. The frequency points that I want to push up in the mix by like 2 dB. And then just tame that upper part there. And that's pretty much how this bass is made. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how I got some different variations to this sound. And it's as simple as just playing with the pitch bend and the notes. For example, this one here, I've turned the semitones down 3 on this, on the oscillator B on the patch. And over here, I've just played around with the notes. I've turned this one down to C2. But as you can see, some of these notes are overlapping. And that sounds nice because they're sort of like gliding into each other. But because I've got legato on and the portamento turned up, you'll hear they're sliding around. They're not just being static. So that with the pitch bend creates all these different sort of tonal characteristics to it. But if I was to turn it off, it would sound like this. Which is cool, but I wanted it to have that slide to create that more natural feel. Yeah, so that's how I'm getting variations basically. And over here, I've got a higher pitch one, which I just transposed up by 3 semitones, that whole thing there. Otherwise, it would sound like this. And then over here, I've done a lower one. So I've pitched it down by an octave. And the same here, just pitched down by an octave essentially. And the only thing that I would note with that is if you are going to pitch it down like that, just have a look at your EQ, because what happens is I had this fundamental frequency from this sound was too loud and it was really distorting. So you can see I've turned it down like 4 dB. It's just an EQ after I'd done that drop on the octave. So yeah, that's how I got variations anyway. But obviously you could add movement to these, cut up the MIDI more so it's more like chopped up notes. Yeah, there's loads of things you can go with that. I think I created just a reverb version in there and cut out all the top end to create like an atmosphere to it. But yeah, loads of different ways you can take this sound. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. So if you like the video, hit the like button. And if you want to see more like this, subscribe. And if you want to support me, head over to my Patreon. I'll leave the link in the description. Sample packs, production videos, exclusive tracks, loads of it. And I'll also be leaving the presets from the videos going forward on Patreon. So yeah,